Today I'd like to talk about a couple of issues, education issues that have come before the Senate, and I think they're really important as far as our program of moving education forward in Washington State. And what we're really trying to do is concentrate on student outcomes, making sure our kids have the tools and skills and knowledge base that they're going to need to compete in what is going to be an ever increasingly competitive workforce out there. One of the bills I think is extremely important is Senate Bill 5242, dealing with a concept called mutual consent. It's probably easier explained in that what this would do is the principal would have greater control over what teachers are in their classroom. There's been a concept out there from several movies called The Dance of the Lemons, and sometimes we have teachers out there who aren't great teachers, and principals tend to move them from school to school to school instead of dealing with it directly. And what this would do is, if I'm the principal, it would say, no, I don't have to take that teacher. And why that is so important is because as we move to greater accountability, not only to our teachers, but with our principals, it's hard to hold that principal accountable if they don't have control of who their team is. It's a basic tenet of business. If you don't have the authority, it's hard for you then to have the responsibility for those outcomes. And I have never been in a great school that didn't have a great principal. And so that's why I think it's so important that we make sure that there's no more excuses from our principals. You can't sit there and say, well, I don't get to pick my team, that's why my school's not performing. No. If your school doesn't perform, we're going to take action and you're going to be responsible for that. We expect your school, your students to perform, and you need to make that happen. If we have this bill, they have no more excuses. One of the other bills, and I think this is important just from a parent standpoint and getting them more involved, is Senate Bill 5328. And what we're trying to do there with that is just let's go to a school grading system. Currently, we grade our schools. Most parents don't know that because we use these esoteric terms like fair, good, struggling, exemplary. Well, what do those mean? Most parents don't know, is fair better than good, and where is that on the grading scale? What we're saying is, let's just go to an education term everybody understands, and that is A through F. Is your school an A? Is it a B? Is it a C? And we're not doing that to punish the schools, but what we're trying to do is let's shed the light. Because currently we have persistently failing schools out there, and that's another bill that we're trying to deal with. But unless parents understand that, here's what fair actually means, fair is a D, then parents can say, hey, my kid deserves better than going to that kind of school. What do we need to do in order to move those systems and improve our education system in those specific schools so that we don't have what I call factories of failure that are generational. I mean, we have schools in this state that have failed kids for generations, and that simply is not acceptable. One of the other avenues that I think is extremely important, and that is third grade reading, Senate Bill 5237. And with that, what we're trying to do is stem, really, dropouts. If you look at the statistics, if a child is not at the grade level, they only have a 1 in 8 chance of ever getting back to grade level if they're not there in the third grade. And that's why it's so important in those early years that we're making the investments, that we're really dovetailing and making sure we have programs specific for those kids to get them at grade level. If they're not at grade level, they're 4 times more likely to be high school dropouts. In a 21st century economy, high school dropouts is simply not acceptable if we're going to be able to have the infrastructure and the tax base we need. If people aren't graduating from high school, basically they're burdens of the state for the rest of their life, and that's not the direction we want to go. So we want to make sure our kids have the tools, the talents, the skills. It begins early. Get them in those positive spirals where they have that good experience, and then their later years are that much better in the education system.